Welcome to the daily Tokyo Hockey Show on the FIH YouTube channel with me, Sarah Juggins. 2 weeks, 76 matches, and a men's and women's Olympic champion crowned at the end of it all. 14 guests have joined the daily hockey show to talk about the matches, offer us insight into the sport, and to share their own experiences. We've heard from Olympic gold medalists, Olympic silver medalists, international coaches, world-class players, and outstanding umpires. And at this point, I just want to thank everybody who's taken their time to come and join me on the show. Today has seen the final 2 matches of the women's hockey competition, and it's been another day of exciting action at the Hokkē Hockey Stadium as the women's competition came to its exciting conclusion. We have a new Olympic champion in the shape of the Netherlands after they beat Argentina 3-1 with another display of great game management and some sublime skills. Earlier in the day, we saw Great Britain take the lead, then lose the lead, then take the lead again to win 4-3 against an India team that came so close to emulating their men's team, winning a bronze medal. To talk about the day's action and to offer an oversight of the entire hockey competition, I am joined by a quartet of experts from the international hockey world. Marcia Cox is a legend in her home nation of South Africa, a triple Olympian and the most capped team sports player to represent South Africa. These days, Marcia is based in the Netherlands, although she is still heavily involved in developing hockey in South Africa. Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me again.
No worries. I nearly forgot to say hello to you, but there we go. Final day and I'm making mistakes all over the place. Jackie Mwangi has been a player and captain and is now head coach for the Kenya national team. She's also heavily involved in hockey development in Africa and is on the FIH Athletes Committee. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, hopefully joining us will be Megrith Mengo. She's rushing back from work. She's the inspirational captain of both the Namibia outdoor and indoor side. And she recently led her team to victory at the Africa Hockey Federation Indoor World Cup qualifier. And so she'll be playing in Belgium next year at the FIH Indoor World Cup. And our fourth guest is Netherlands' Rogier Hofman, who was a silver medalist with the Netherlands team at the 2012 Olympic Games and who graced the national team for a decade between 2006 and 2016. Roger is also joint chair of the FIH Athletes Committee. Hi, Roger. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. I'm doing great. It's great to be here on the final day.
Absolutely, and our male representative on the panel today as well. Fantastic.
Sorry?
I said, and our one male representative. On
Yeah. You have to be equally amazing, right?
Always. And actually, as a Dutch man, my first question goes to you. How delighted were you with the women's performance today and actually throughout the tournament?
Yeah, that was great. It is so incredibly difficult if everybody expects you to win and expects you to play great hockey. And it's such a big challenge and a big compliment to them that they were able to do that. They played great hockey throughout the final, and they won. And that is, I'm extremely proud. And I got some goosebumps watching them because playing an Olympic final and winning, I never got to do it. And I'm also a bit jealous because I think that's the best thing that you can have in your athlete career.
Yeah, I mean, one of our guests earlier, Simon Mason, made the comment that there's a very, very special and exclusive club of Olympians, but there's an absolutely stratospheric club of people who can say they've won a gold medal, and to be in that club, those players really, really deserved it. But before we look at the final in detail, let's just spend a little bit of time talking about the women's bronze medal game. As I said earlier, it was a match that took some twists and turns. Ellie Rhea opened the scoring for Great Britain at the start of the second quarter. Sarah Robertson scored an absolute scorcher of a goal to give her side a 2-0 lead. But then just before half-time, India blasted into life. Gurjit Kaur put away 2 fantastic penalty corners to bring the score to 2-2. And then just ahead of the whistle, Katarina Vandana added another goal to make it 3-2. The second half followed a similar ebb and flow pattern in terms of attack and possession, but it was Great Britain who found the net. Holly Pern-Webb scored from the top of the circle to make it 3-3. And then Grace Ballston put away an excellent penalty corner to give her team a 4-3 lead. And GB actually showed quite a lot of discipline to hold on until the final whistle. I wondered, Marcia, did you see the game? And if so, what were your thoughts on the match?
I did. I did watch the game, and I must admit, the first quarter I felt that Great Britain showed that they meant business and they were not going to go home empty-handed. The ball didn't fall in the back of the goal for them, but it was really clear from the style of play that they showed a bit of dominance. I thought India were on the defensive foot from particularly that quarter of the game. And I think, they did exceptionally well to claw their way back into the game, considering how deep they played in that first quarter and how much pressure they absorbed. But yeah, I think that they did really, really well to come back in. But I think that, in these do or die games, the full 60 minutes count, and they might be disappointed in the way they started, because then you're just in a battle against not only the opposition, but also yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. However, I mean, India have improved over the course of the tournament and gained an awful lot of experience. I mean, Jackie, if we look at India's performance overall from when they turned up to today's game, what do you think has improved or changed within the team's sort of psyche, if you like?
I think what I really enjoy about their style of play right now is that they have a lot of confidence. Their game management is very good. They're not scared. I mean, they're ready to fight for every single possession. They don't care who's who in the other team. They work together as a team is fantastic, and the fitness levels, I think, were pretty good. Previous games I've seen before the Olympics. So I'm very, very happy with their performance today.
Yeah, I mean, and Roger, there's obviously quite a big Dutch influence on the Indian women's side, in the shape of Sjoerd Marin and Janneke Schotman. From what you know of these two individuals, what will they have brought to the India side that was perhaps missing in the past, in the years leading up to that sort of takeover of the management?
Yeah, I think that goes to what Jackie's saying also, that it goes to also a bit of structure and discipline, which you actually need to get that skill to which you need to really use that skill that they have. They always have been skilled players, but the discipline and the structure, what they were lacking in the past, and that's what they're doing really well right now. But what I also think these two Dutch people are really good at is giving them the confidence and the trust that they are actually really good players and they are capable of beating, which they have felt in the past, better teams. And that is I think the biggest step you can have as an athlete is having the confidence that you can beat your opponent.
Yeah.
And that is one big step that they have made, because also in this bronze medal match is that coming back from a 2-0 in this game, that you need a lot of skills and confidence to get back from that. So I think that they did a great job as a team, but also the staff did a great job in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams, I think probably all of us on this panel will agree. At the start of the tournament, looking at the form of the teams, we wouldn't have expected to see a bronze medal match between Great Britain and India. So I think, Marcia, how much is this a sign of the way that the coaches have actually managed their teams and managed their momentum moving through the tournament in quite an effective way, actually?
Yeah, I think at the start of the tournament, we said that there would be teams that would grow into the event, considering the build-up, with it being so disjointed as a result of the year and a half that everybody has had. And that it could not be more true for these two teams in particular. I think it's a combination of managing your teams in the heat as well, but also managing your expectations per game and taking it one game at a time. I think that was really clear from both of these teams' perspective. They knew their job for the pool phase, and once that box was ticked, then they could refocus and regroup for the knockout phase of the quarterfinals and then the semifinal. And I think that has probably been the most refreshing from this event, is that it was not as predictable as it has been in the past. So I think that mindset of just taking it one game at a time proved in this circumstance to be probably the best way. I mean, nobody expected India to beat Australia in that quarterfinal. So, that's just evidence that they just took it one game at a time. They had a good tactic, and that is compliments to their coaching staff. They manage their play as well. So yeah, I think that they deserve a lot of respect and a lot of compliment, both teams actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And Roger, we spoke after the semi-finals about the fact that GB was still living a little in the shadow of their Rio win, and they needed to move on from that. Do you think this will now have drawn a line under that, and Mark Hager and Katie Glynn can now get on and almost press a reset button for Great Britain, and take them on a slightly different path now?
Well, you had the feeling they had to start over after Rio, right? And maybe you had the feeling that it's going to take a while for them to get back on track and back on winning games and back on winning tournaments or even medals. And the fact that they already did it right now after winning the gold medal in Rio, I think it's going to be a great boost for women's hockey in GB. And I think that's the biggest win they can get, because once you and I know that from experience, once you've tasted that medal or tasted that games that you actually want to play, you want to get more out of it. You want to get more of those games, and that gives you the just that extra bit of energy and that extra bit of edge to win those games and to win the tournaments in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about taking hockey back home after being in a medal match, obviously. There's been an awful lot of spoken about India women doing that, and we've read an awful lot of backstories. I mean, there was a big piece on the BBC website today, and I'm sure it's the same across international media, telling the stories of the Indian women's squad coming from impoverished backgrounds, families who wanted their daughters to get married, and the daughters wanted to play hockey, and all of these stories, and each one of them in itself would make a great story standing alone. All of you have been involved in development work, albeit on a different continent or in different countries. But what needs to happen now to make sure that the talented kids in India do get an opportunity to achieve their potential in sport, i.e. how do they make this legacy a tangible thing? And if I come to Jackie first on that.
I think this is such an inspiring story for India and for the rest of the developing nations. I think India now needs to create more development centers and more little leagues for the little kids and little children, and try and create different age groups and have it structured properly. Also educate their coaches on what is needed for those players to play in the elite level. And I think once they do that, they'll have continuity in their teams. Yeah.
Marsha, your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we've got also a country where culturally it's not encouraging for girls to play any sport in particular, let alone hockey. And we know how some of the hockey men are celebrated and on the back end of winning a medal, how much more they're going to be put on that pedestal and actually get celebrity status in the country. It would be nice to sort of piggyback as a sport off the success of the men and make it encouraging for women. But I do think that we also have to be respectful of the cultural challenges that they will face with encouraging little girls to play the sport. And perhaps some of the learnings can be taken from other countries with similar challenges, where, if we look at China, how there is a lot of poverty, there is a lot of also these cultural challenges of playing sport, but they sort of dangle the carrot at the end of the stick by offering financial rewards for sports programs.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is an idea for encouraging young girls to play, is more money invested in programs so that the families can see the sort of financial gain and encourage their young daughters to play the sport and not walk down the aisle, perhaps.
Or walk down the aisle as well, maybe.
As well, yeah. I think we should do one hurdle at a time.
Roger, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I completely agree also with both of them, but also with the comment Marcia has made. India is such a big country, and there's so many people, and there's so many people cheering for you as well. But there's also a lot of money, and especially now when India men winning the medal also, and the women in the semis, is if they're able to, after this great opportunity for India also put a lot of the funds that they were getting into the women's as well. That will be a big step, because the men's, it's great, but we saw them coming up, and this medal is not really a surprise. They have been doing great for the last years, but this women's medal is a surprise, and you need to use this momentum as a kickstart to get women also being role models, and to see for women in India that there's future in being a hockey player, and that it's great to be there, and it's actually people look up to you, and that is what you want to get. And step one is not putting all the funds to the men's hockey, and try to put that also in equally. But that's like Marcia's saying, that's maybe a challenge. But let's get more funds to the women as well, and they have better opportunities to do so. And then I think it will be, that more women will want to play hockey and are able to play hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I just really hope those women go back to a hero's welcome, and you see their names plastered all over billboards, so young girls can look up and say, "Yep, I want to be like her, like Rani." Moving on to the final. There have been moments during this entire event where I've just really missed the atmosphere provided by a crowd. Although I've got to say, it's been quite a pleasant perspective to be able to hear the umpires talking to each other, and what the players are saying, and occasionally what the coaches are saying. But for these two teams, I mean, that should have been a stadium full of orange and blue and white, shouldn't it? And that should have been an absolute spectacle. Marcia, what were your thoughts on the game?
I think that the rightful winner has won. I thought that the Netherlands showed their class and dominance from minute one till the final whistle. It would have been nice to have a thriller like the men. Of course, just because as a spectator, it's much easier to say that on the couch. But I think that the Netherlands have shown complete dominance from the start of this tournament, and they deserve to get a medal in the style, in the class that they did today. They had a point to prove, whether it was to themselves or whether it was to the world, but they certainly outclassed Argentina today.
There was a small moment of time, Roger, wasn't there, where Argentina scored and you wondered whether the game was going to switch. What were your thoughts at that moment?
Yeah, it was an important moment, right? Because the 3-0 going back to the changing room is really different than 3-1. But they didn't get out. They didn't get out and beaten off the field. The Dutch girls, they were like, okay, it's still okay. 3-1. If where can I sign before the game is if it's 3-1 at halftime. So I think they were quite at ease still, and I think that they said to each other in the changing room as well, 3-1 is a good score. We're doing well. But in the end, it was the lifeline that Argentina needed, and I think they took it because it wasn't an easy game for Holland. I agree with Marcia. It was a win. It was a good win, but it wasn't an easy game, and that's how a final should be. And I agree the 3-1 against Argentina in the final, that maybe says it about the Dutch Olympic experience. They won. They did a great job. They played good hockey, but it wasn't easy, and that's how it's supposed to be.
And one player who hasn't found it easy all tournament, but who actually, I think, found her groove today was Kaya van Massaker, because she hadn't been putting the penalty corners away, and today she scored twice. Jackie, how important was it for a player like Kaya to finish this tournament on a high when maybe she hadn't been, operating at full 100% up to that point?
I think as a coach, this is a proud moment to have a player like her step up when she's, not that she wasn't needing the other matches, but this was a match that we needed her to step up, and she did. And it's inspiring for people also who are struggling to play very, very hard matches, and finally they get their groove on, and they come and perform as she did today. Well, fantastic penalty corners. Yes.
Yeah, and it was a mark of the coach's belief in her as well, that she kept going with her. Roger, what are the qualities that the Dutch bring to the table every time? I mean, Alison at the end referred to doing the basics well and actually not being too innovative. Is simplicity, is that the key to their success?
Well, I wouldn't say you can call the Dutch team and the Dutch girls winning on simplicity. I think that's not really fair, but what I do agree on is that you don't see them make many mistakes, and that's one of the great things that they're capable of. But also one of the things that they're really good at is they make sure everybody's important, and that means to me is that if Matla doesn't score in the final, somebody else will, or if Felice Albers doesn't score in the final, somebody else will, and then it doesn't really matter if you're playing for a 9, but somebody else will. Just make sure you always play a 6.5 or a 7. And that's a great number to score, because somebody else will make sure they will be that 9 or 10 in that game, and that makes sure that your basic level such a high level that if everybody just reaches that basic level, you will win that game, and because you will for sure that somebody will be that 9 in that game. And I think that's the biggest quality from Holland. That's one of the things that we have been talking about, that Kaya now scores 2 goals in the final. She was that 9 today, and maybe she haven't been that 9 in the rest of the tournament. She was the 9 in the final, and then that means it doesn't really matter who is that 9. I think that's
the thing you're going to remember, isn't it? As she walks off the pitch, she's the woman who scored 2 goals, and that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more about the coach. Marcia, we saw 2 very different coaching styles on the pitch today. We had Alison and we had Carlos. Can you sort of just talk about Alison's style of coaching and some of the skills of coaching that she brings to her role?
I think one of the things we mentioned earlier in the show was her personal contact that she has with the players, and just that understanding of where they're at and what they can deliver. That I think is something, it's a strength of hers, because it's, to go into not just the tournament, but to go into a final knowing exactly what Regia is saying. Like, if you know that if you're having a bad day, that you keep your basic level at a certain level, at least a 6.5 or a 7, as he says, that someone else will shine. But I think what she brings is that clarity on confirming that for the players, that if you're not having a good day, it's okay. Someone else is going to have a good day. But just make sure that you do your basics right. And I think that that's probably a lot of what it means to ensure that when she says that we make sure that our basics are good, I think that probably is what she means, is that if our basics are good, then our level, our poorest level of performance is still quite high.
Yeah.
And that mindset for any player is reassuring but challenging at the same time.
Yeah, and I think as well when she says that they don't need to be innovative, actually their basic levels are at such a level that what they then do next looks easy, and you've got a great team when the hard things look very, very easy and very simple. One thing that many of the viewers might not know is how actually relatively little time the head coach of the Dutch teams have with their players, because the club system is so strong. And obviously both Roger and Marcia, the club system very well. Can you just explain the relationship between the national team and the clubs, and how the coaches sort of talk to each other? Because there has to be a level of understanding there. If we come to Marcia first, then Roger can add his thoughts.
Yeah, I'm really have always been impressed with the way the Dutch do it. So I know that the national coach is also working really close with the KNHB in terms of establishing a timeline with the league. So if you know that there are major tournaments in the summer, what is your timeline that you require with the team, so that, and then the league dates are slightly manipulated so that you can have maybe more double headers in the club league, giving you more time with the national team, just as your final build up. But I know that there's that relationship. It's not just the coach and the clubs. There's also the coach and the KNHB, which is really important. And then there is a lot of structure that allows for that communication to then go from the coach to the clubs with what the expectation is on the centralized training program. At which stages will they take a break? At which stages will they go into full on training? And normally the players would be excused from 1, sometimes 2 club training sessions in a week so that they can fulfill their centralized training program, which normally is play a game on Sunday, and then it used to be check-in Sunday night, and then it changed to check-in Monday, and then it depends on where they're doing it. But pretty much Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the day that the national teams are together. And that then is also replicated in the under-21 setup for shorter periods of time. So from under-21 level, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Regia, it also happens at like under-16 and under-18, but just very short, like maybe for a month, they'll have this sort of periodization where they will go into training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with the national squad. But from a young age, the players are also comfortable with the system, and they're also comfortable with having the confidence to also sit with their club coaches themselves and talk about where they at, and if the program is too much for them, and how they then individually can be managed better.
So it's a very, very coherent program with all the stakeholders speaking. Roger, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in an ideal world, that's exactly what it is. But it's also a struggle, right? It's also because you have so many stakeholders that are important and that want something. For example, if you're a club coach, you always want your players at your club, and if you're a head coach of the national team, you always want your players at the national team. So it's always a bit of a struggle, and sometimes it's actually really difficult to as a head coach of your club, but also as a head coach of the national team, to make sure that you have the feeling you have your players enough time, and also give them enough time at the national team. But that's why we have a great club culture, and it's amazing to play in our clubs in Holland. But it also makes it sometimes difficult to have enough time with your national team. And my guess is that in the next few years, also in Holland, I think if we want to, for example, if you see our men's in a tournament, if we want to keep up with some other countries, then maybe we have to do something about the club structure that we have in Holland. So it's going to be an interesting thing. For the ladies, it works perfectly because it's balanced out. It works. Everybody's happy. And then in the other hand, if it doesn't work out really well, then, for example, maybe the men's team want more time with the national team, but that's not possible because we have our club culture. So it's always a bit of a hassle, but club culture that we have is amazing.
And also the club teams at the top, there's a distinct difference between the club teams at the top with 6 or more national players and those in the middle with fewer, because your club sessions are less disruptive with one training session with only 6 players. If you picture it on the flip side, and like Regia said, I think that has to also be mentioned that with the men there's a lot more investment in the club hockey, so there's a lot more demand from the club hockey structures, whereas with the women there is investment but it's not as high. So I think the expectation and that demand from the club perspective of players to be at every single training session is not that challenging as in comparison to the men. Yeah.
Sounds to me like there's an internal debate going on there, so I might move on from that one. Just to wrap up, a couple of points. There's going to be an awful lot of people now who will be retiring from the game. I mean, we already know there are some coaches who are moving on. Some coaches will step down. A lot of players, this will be their last time gracing an Olympic stage. And it was sort of fairly obvious from the emotions that are being shown that this was going to happen. All 3 of you have gone through that. You've gone through retirement. That has to be such a difficult period in an athlete's life, because you are, in effect, ending one identity and having to start another one. So I just wonder, I mean, Jack, if I come to you first, and then I'd like to hear everybody's sort of thoughts on this. How do you make that transition from being an elite athlete to becoming a coach or a business person or whatever it might be? Jackie, to you first.
I think if you plan early, it will be a bit easier. It's never easy because you're so used to high-level competition. You want to perform all the time. You can't play social hockey. You just want to get into the pitch and do your best. So I think for me, it was a bit easier because I started coaching really early while I was playing.
Yeah.
And I developed that love of empowering my students, younger players. And so it was easier for me to still stay in the game, knowing that I couldn't perform at that level that I've always performed. And that way it was easier for me to have that transition. But for others who have not really decided on what they have to do, it gets a bit hard for them, and it's a bit difficult. But if they had already had another career in place, then they adjust to that. But if they can stay in the sport, either umpiring or being a judge or anything, it's good for them.
Yeah, or becoming a Olympic champion, leading head coach of a female team. Marsha, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Jackie in terms of having a plan. One of the things that definitely helps with the transition from full-time athletes to having a career or starting your career, because that can also be quite daunting. The fact that you've probably missed out on anything between 10 and 15 years in the corporate world, while other people have built up their reputation and experience. But one of the things that definitely helps with the transition is actually pursuing both a little bit. So, what a luxury position to be in, that you get to choose when you retire. There are also many athletes who don't have that luxury of choice. But if you can, the thing that helped me a lot was still playing in the Hoofdklasse here while working. So, you had the time to transition between having one foot in the competitive hockey and one foot in building up your corporate career as well. And I think that is also the trend that you see particularly in the Dutch, but a lot of the time with a lot of the other players as well. I do think that, I remember chatting to Luciana Ema in Rio about this, and she said, I was encouraged to carry on training. So, it was no surprise that you saw her training nearly just as hard as some of the international athletes. So I think, there's a physical element, but there's also a mental element, and you've got to find on your personal note, which is the right strategy for you to make that transition.
Yes, Roger, tough time, to transition.
Yeah, no. The interesting thing is actually during these games, I've noticed something about myself, and because about the transition, I've started my own company during my career and a charity, and from the moment that I stopped, I just went into work and doing other things. And during these Olympic Games, and I noticed it about myself during the opening ceremony, and then after every single game and every medal that has been won, that I didn't really stop being an athlete until now. I've noticed during watching these games that I've been part of the Olympic cycle since 2008, and I've noticed during this last 2.5 weeks that I haven't stopped being part of it. Because I've noticed it during all these matches. I've got goosebumps. I get emotional when I see people win medals. So maybe I didn't have maybe I didn't have the switch yet, or maybe I switched too easy or too soon, or because I stopped playing completely. I didn't do anything anymore. I tried to get some running again, but it's funny. I've noticed that maybe the transition is going too fast for me. I have to take one step back and enjoy the ride and enjoy what I did in those 12 years and look back and be proud. And that's what I have now. But I've noticed it's been an amazing 2.5 weeks to watch the Olympic Games like this, but it's also been really strange to not be part of it anymore. And that's the first time I've ever noticed that it was emotional not being part of like an Olympic team or whatever anymore. And that got to me. That's interesting. I noticed that about myself.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, you're not the only one of the guests who said the same thing. they hadn't seen any other Olympic events because all the focus had been on hockey for cycle after cycle after cycle, and suddenly you're able to see all these other things going on. But it's I can't even begin to imagine how you feel as someone who's used to being at the top of your sport and suddenly you're watching others doing it and not taking part. Very, very tough. We're not going to wrap up on that sad note. We're going to wrap up on your moments of the games and your people that you think have made a huge impact. So I'll come to each of you in turn and just ask you for a moment that when you look back at Tokyo 2020, what will stand out in your mind, and just a couple of names out there, someone to watch for the future or somebody who's made a huge impact on the game. We'll come to Marsha first.
Okay, so I think moments in these games that stand out for me was, of course, our South African men beating Germany. That is a definite standout moment. And then on the women's side, of course, the quarterfinal between India and Australia, just that game was a standout moment for a number of reasons on both ends. For Australia, I was heartbroken, but at the same time, I was really excited for a team like India, who we actually beat in 2012 to be in the London Olympic Games. So, they've come a long way. And a standout player for me is Felice Albers from the Netherlands. She came into this tournament really inexperienced, but she's made sure that she's left her mark, and that was her goal, to leave a mark in this team. And for me, that just says a lot about her mentality, but also her talent and her potential. And I'm excited to see where she goes.
Yeah, she certainly looks like an absolute natural part of that team, doesn't she? She did today. Great, thank you. Jackie, your thoughts?
I think Eva de Coudes from, what would be the right way to say her name? I keep saying it wrong.
My name pronunciation's awful. I think it's Eva de Coudes.
There you go, thank you. I think for a captain to lead her squad in every single match, I think 8 matches, and win every single match, it tells me a lot about her leadership. And we haven't really noticed her maybe that much during this Tokyo, because I think, like Roger said, the whole team is playing wonderfully and perfectly. And I think she's been amazing as a leader, and that's my player.
So your moment is when she had the medal around her neck?
Yes, I love that.
Okay, Roger, wrap it up for us. Your moment of the
First, in general, what I find amazing about these games is that the two teams which you maybe expected the most from actually did win. But on the other hand, a lot of teams which you maybe didn't really expect that kind of performance, they also put in that performance, like South Africa men, India men and women. I think that's great, because that's when the top of the world and the quality is getting closer towards each other. And that's a great thing. That's what we should have. But the thing that stands out for me is the shootout from Belgium against Australia, because and multiple things, actually 2 things is Australia getting the video referral, and then as a goalie you stop it again. I think that's incredibly amazing. And also from Hendricks, who has to step in and take that penalty stroke at such an important moment, but be so cool about it and just give it such a hard push that nobody can stop it. That for me stands out and tells me something about the power that Belgium had during this tournament. So that's the moment for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. Just talking hockey with people from the hockey world, and it's really, really appreciated. But thank you very, very much indeed to you and to all the other guests as well who've appeared on the show. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.
Brilliant.
Thanks for having us.